Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
It's a great pleasure to welcome our guest today, Linda Liu, the head of ecosystem at Oasis. Linda, welcome to the Blockchain Show.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Ethan. Truly to be honored to be invited here. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Kind of like to learn a little bit about you since it's your first time on the show. So if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about your background and how you got involved with blockchain.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I'm Linda. I'm the head of ecosystem at Oasis. And I've been with the team for kind of like 2.5 years now. I manage the cross-functional teams, the product, community, marketing, and business development. It's been quite a journey. I learned a lot and continue to have a steep learning curve at where I am now. And my background is, before Oasis, I was an investor. So I work in capital markets, like a long equity fund and a hedge fund for about 5 years. And then I pivoted to early stage VC. It's actually in VC, early stage VC, I think it was around like second half 2017. Coincidentally, that's also when the blockchain industry really start booming. And that's how I got massively exposed to the industry. I just started to see a lot of deals coming to my desk. Like those blockchain crypto deals, and those deals were just drastically different from the traditional equity deal. And it was the first time back in 2017 I heard the word tokenomics. That word was not necessarily very familiar to me before that. I think through just all these very interesting interactions with founders, blockchain developers back in 2017 and 2018. That's really kind of like push me to just continue to study, dig more into the industry. And eventually I made a decision that I want to become an operator. So no more investing, become an operator, and kind of like completely devote myself to the industry. Yeah, around that time, in 2018, I also met my current founder, Professor Dong Song, founder of Oasis. And around that time, and then we had a lovely conversation. We'll continue the conversation. And in 2019, there's a mutual fit, and I joined the team, and the rest is history. So it's been quite a journey, and truly rewarding journey, I would say.
Yeah, definitely ahead of the curve. I think that I remember that time. Being very excited because I think is gaining a lot of momentum. I still feel like we're kind of transitioning from Web 2 to Web 3. I don't know if you agree, but
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
we're probably going to be in this transition for a while. Web 2. If you look into the history of the internet, right, like Web 1.0 is like in the 90s and early 2000s. And then mid 2000 that started, and Web 1.0 is like AOL of the world, right? And the Web 2.0 mid 2000 till now, that's where you have the social media platform. Those search platforms start to emerge, video platforms start to emerge, and it's going to take some time for Web 3 to completely take over Web 2. Just looking back into the history.
Kind of curious how social media is going to play into Web 3, but maybe that's a topic for a different day. But yeah, tell me more about Oasis. I'd like to learn, about what problems you're trying to solve, and anything you'd like to share there would be wonderful.
Yeah, for sure. So Oasis is a leading privacy-enabled proof of stake layer 1 network. We are highly scalable, low gas fees, and very secure. So these allows us to provide just very compelling and competitive developer and user experience to the community. Allow us to really serve very well for those high momentum applications such as DeFi, NFT, gaming, and metaverse related. And beyond all these high-level features, Oasis Network is also very versatile by design. The reason we can do that is because we decouple compute from consensus. So we have the consensus layer, the proof of stake mechanism, and on top of that, we have the compute layer. We call it paratimes, short from parallel runtimes, paratimes, and each runtime can be spun up to support very different compute demands. So if you think about what is commonly known in the industry, in the Web3 industry right now, is mostly EVM based. And so that's your DeFi NFT, but that's just one type of compute demand. And if we think, just we like talk about it 30 seconds ago or something, like if we think Web3 can take over Web2, that needs to be able to cater to a wide different range of compute demand. Just think about the compute demand we're doing right now in the Web2 world, like the Google, Facebook, enterprise companies, like what kind of a complex demand, complex compute they're doing on a daily basis. Think about if we can somehow believe Web3 will take over Web2, all these complex compute demands need to be shifted to the on-chain world, and that needs a blockchain network to be able to support that wide range compute demands. So we believe as the industry continues to evolve, like Oasis is literally best positioned to cater to that wide range compute demand in the future because of this unique layered architecture. Consensus and compute layer paradigms allow us to serve very different type of compute versus just one type of compute, which is EVM based. So I guess in a nutshell, Oasis is a decentralized layer one blockchain network, highly scalable, low gas fees, secure, privacy enabled, and very versatile.
No, I like what you said. That's very interesting. I think that when I think about legacy systems, what most folks are doing on the internet today, pretty basic stuff. It's stored on servers for the most part. A lot of services like, just to name a few, Google or Facebook or even YouTube. People think it's free and they think it's great, but actually it's not quite free because their data is being kind of taken and used for advertising, for selling. But from a business perspective, it makes sense because those companies have to, they have to provide all that computing power. So transitioning into Web3, like you mentioned, scaling was an issue. And I've always kind of wondered, what is it going to take to move these services to more of a Web3 model to incentivize people? So definitely curious about, how Oasis is kind of facilitating that. I mean, is it, I don't know if you want to talk about like maybe some of the technical parts, how that could work, because a lot of people are familiar with mining. A lot of people are familiar with, cryptocurrency, but, moving beyond just finance, how can we, have our data? How can we have our internet interactions on a more secure blockchain type system? Sorry, it's kind of a bad question, but you can take that any way you'd like.
I think it's a great question. I think you point out quite well the fact that in the current Web2 world, and when you interact with those mega social media advertising platforms, and you're exactly right, where all those services seem to be free, and they're saying that if you consume this, stuff on the internet for free, high chance that you're part of the product. So as an internet user now, I consider myself a part of product for all these social mega platforms because I contribute data to them, and they use that data to do a lot of machine learning and to curate better services, better content, and inevitably more targeted ads to me as a user. And that's how they monetize their business model. So that's fair in the Web2 world. And then when we think deep, that's how things worked in the past, and is that sustainable? Is that how things supposed to work in the future? And so that brings up the questions that as a user, sure, I'm interacting interacting with those services. I'm also contributing a lot of data to you, and as a mega platform, you're sharing a lot of data with those ads buyers, all these data transactions. But as a data contributor myself and tons of users out there, like we were being completely cut out from that value transaction, the data transactions. We're not even part of the value chain. Even interesting, we're actually the owner. We actually contribute the data, for that transaction to even exist, to begin with. So how can we make sure the owner of the data to actually be part of that value chain? Kind of like, because right now we're not even invited to that table. So I think that's the problem that Oasis is trying to solve. It's kind of like build this, what we call responsible data economy. So that allows us to make sure we honor individual data rights and reward data contributor for the data use. So they're not just sharing data and then being completely cut off from the value chain. And how we do that is actually sure, we definitely need technology to be able to enable that. So there are two things that are required here. You need data tokens. You can also call it some sort of like data NFT. Data NFT essentially is a token that allows access to run computation on the data wrapped underneath that token, and to allow the computation to honor the data policy set by the data contributor. I know it's kind of it's a bit mouthy, but basically what I'm trying to say here is, as a data owner, I get to dictate how I want my data to be computed on, and who gets to compute on my data, and how I want my data to be shared. It's not just I give you data and then you can just do whatever you want. And so this data NFT, this data token allows for future computation on my data, on users' data, to be computed in a very responsible way. And then you also need the responsible data technologies. So those are your commonly know, those privacy preserving technologies. So there is secure enclave, or you can call it TE, trust execution environment. There's zero knowledge proof, federated machine learning, and differential privacy. There's a wide range of privacy preserving technologies out there. Those responsible data technologies enable data consumers. So we're not saying that advertising should not exist in Web3 or anything. So it should still be supported, but it needs to be supported like in a way that where data is computed in a responsible way. So in the future, when I say advertisers or as agencies, when they want to run data, run computation on consumers' data, it needs to be run in a responsible way using the responsible data technology, those privacy preserving technology, to ensure data is computed in a privacy preserving way, and while honoring the data owners' data policy, like how they want their data to be shared and computed. So it's quite, I would say it's quite complex. It's definitely not like an easy thing where we can say like, hey, let's just shift 100% towards responsible data economy right now. It needs a lot of work, and Oasis, we're definitely working towards that to build a better data economy, more responsible data economy, to make sure the owners of the data actually can get ownership back, versus because in the Web 2 world, in the Web 2.0 world, you don't have ownership of your data. It's pretty much controlled by the mega platforms, the platform where you interact pretty much on a daily basis for their services. So we want to change that. We want to make sure that we start to work towards direction where ownership start to bit by bit be given back to the owners of the data.
Yeah, that's super important, very valuable. I wonder if in the future they're going to look back at us and just think we were insane putting so much of our data out there. It almost reminds me like when you watch an old documentary and they're reading letters that people would send to each other, or diaries. It's like, that's very personal. How did they get a hold of their diaries? How did they get a hold of their, personal correspondence? But I think about now, there's probably so much more of that out there that people aren't aware of, that if somebody knew what they were doing, could get a hold of a lot of information, but even things people voluntarily put about themselves on the internet. I definitely think there needs to be more education for internet privacy, but that's a different topic. But anyways, I like what you said. I think that there's really, it's like, I like how there's some anonymity with blockchain. I mean, but not really, because you can track different transactions. You can you can pretty much see where things are going. But there's also there's no really way to prevent people from just randomly airdropping funds into your wallet, or it's kind of strange. Something I didn't really think about until today, because I think I had some crypto put into one of my wallets from an exchange as a promotion, and I was like, I didn't want that. I mean, cool, but now I got to deal with like reporting that for taxes. Maybe that's just, I don't know. It was just like a strange thing that popped into my head. Like, is there any way to just like stop incoming, airdrops from random projects? Or just having more privacy settings. And it's interesting to hear you talk about this, because I have these ideas, but I have no idea how they would work. So it's kind of cool to hear how there's a team of people actually solving some real world problems. So what's your thoughts on that? Like on the future of people, interacting in Web3 who don't really know what they're doing, and is the goal to kind of make it like an easy user interface so people can easily kind of take control of their data, or are you having struggles kind of making that work with Web2? Because I know we're in this transitionary phase. Just kind of curious about how that would look or work from the user's point of view.
Well, I think it's definitely going to take some time to get there, to enable this kind of like very easy, intuitive user experience. Because if you look, kind of like just take a step back, like, what we just discussed, that, data ownership, like taking ownership of something is also responsibility. I think if you look at what we're doing in Web2, is like, we don't really, there's like literally like, no friction. You go onto the website and you start using the service. Maybe now you start to, sign some term TNC, but people rarely pay much attention to it. If we really want to grow this responsible data economy, I think as an owner of your own, we need to actually see data as your properties. It's just like how you protect your cars, your personal possessions. Like so that requires a lot more like kind of like conscious decision making. It's like, so you need to set a data policy, how I want my data to be shared and be computed on. So that is, I guess, for, lack of a better word, that might be construed as some sort of like friction, but I do think it's a friction in a good way. It's like, I think it requires some sort of education first. The people starting to see data as it's actually your property, your possession. You own it. If you own it, you need to know how to own it, like how to actually take control of your property here. So you need to be very explicit, very deliberate about how you want your data to be shared, to be used by third parties. And that is not something behavior we were trained to do in the Web2 world, because we were never given opportunity of to do that. But in the Web3 world, I think certain education is definitely warranted, where like it requires a lot more conscious decision making, and we need to take data very seriously, especially our personal data. And I think once people have that kind of mindset, they will start to see that, okay, there are little step before I can just consume a service. The little step is basically like where I need to stipulate how I want my data to be used by third parties. I think once people realize data is actually just as important as their cars, their laptops, their personal belongings, they will start to take this conscious decision making as a more of a necessity versus just some sort of like friction that I need to go through, just in the hoop I need to jump to be able to use that service or something. So I do think certain education on data, on personal data, is important as the industry continues to evolve. And then once we're there, like once we have a majority market on the same page about this, I think I have full confidence that Web3 can provide just a smooth user experience as what Web2 renders to the users.
Yeah,
if we do it right.
definitely agree. The whole idea of tokenizing data, that's very I don't know what the word would be, but it's good to hear. It's something that a lot of people don't realize how valuable their interactions online can be to other third parties who'd like to analyze that data. So, is there a way that people can tokenize their data and potentially, earn rewards by like staking it, or is that just kind of a dream?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we actually have a few community projects currently working on this. So one of our partners called Genetica, which is one of the biggest genome sequencing genetic companies in Asia Pacific, and they're kind of like just like 23andMe, their presence in the States. So they are focusing on Asia Pacific, so they start to build this kind of they call it Genetica like DAO, data DAO project. As a persons, you think about your data that you have on Facebook, Google, important. Think about your genome data, how valuable that could be, because a lot of drug pharmaceutical companies want to harvest the data for good use. They actually want to use that data to propel future drug development, medical research. It's all for good use. But in the current world, that kind of data transactions primarily happening between the service provider, the genome sequencing service providers, and then drug makers and those medical research companies, where the individual genome data owner not necessarily being invited to that value chain. So they're trying to change that. The Genetica, they're setting up a data DAO, and where they want to invite their consumers, the customers who've been taking the genome sequencing services from them, who send a saliva sample to them to get the genome, get the genome sequence data. Want to have those individual customers to be invited to be part of the value chain. And so I think that's definitely a very interesting step forward. And I do think they're making a lot of progress there. And we also have some other data DAO project that's currently still very early, being incubated, currently in the making. And I'll make sure to share more once we have more on that. But I do think it's not a dream, definitely not a pipe dream. It's not a dream. This is very much happening. It does take some time to really, bring this to the mass market, but we do have full confidence that it will get to mass market soon.
Yeah, that's amazing, really. I mean, just thinking about scientific studies, the possibilities in the future, how, globally people could get involved. And I mean, do you think that, I know with that example, it involves DNA, but would there be any way that people could remain somewhat anonymous, like choose which information about themselves they share based on the study, or maybe, some other study that might come in the future, like say they don't want to give their name, but they're okay giving their age and their, height and weight, and that would there be a way to like tailor what information the third party would be able to analyze?
Absolutely. So if you think about those, I'm definitely not an expert in medical research, but it's, given my limited knowledge about that space, like, those medical research companies, they're actually not particularly interested in individual data. They actually want to look at cohorts data to be able to derive sort of patterns, and then that could be useful to their research. Like people sharing certain, genetic feature or something, like putting the cohort, and then how that evolved. So that is more important to them than any sort of individual sample data. So I think from research perspective, they're probably less interested in like some very specific individual, like a name or something. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, yes, so that's what we talked about earlier, like when we say data policy. As a data owner, this genome data is definitely your property, how you want this property to be shared. And it's different from like loaning your friend a car or a laptop or something. Like this is need to get very, very granular. Like, of course, if you want your name, your address, even your social security number to be shared, you can obviously choose that. But we want to design a product where like at least we need to give people the choice. You can only take if you only want my certain genome related data to be shared, but definitely not any sort of like personal identifiable data to be shared with the third-party partners, you should definitely have the right to do that. So that's what we meant by data policy. Like computation and data sharing can only, in the responsible data economy, computation and data sharing need to honor data policy that is stipulated by the data owner.
Yeah, very good. So the parallel smart contract layers was something that kind of caught my attention. Is it more for developers who would like to use the the high scalability, your consensus, or is the foundation more focused on enabling developers to utilize the technology, or does Oasis actually develop any applications as well?
Right. So we don't really develop applications ourselves as a foundation. So the parallel runtime, so we currently have 3 paradigm. So one is Emerald, the EVM compile paradigm. So that is just like, we call it better Ethereum. So it's kind of very similar to Avalon C chain, Polygon, Near, I think, has Aurora. Yeah, so it's very similar to like the straight up EVM compatible. You can run DeFi. We actually have quite a few DeFi projects, DEX lending, and then quite a few NFT collections minted on that paradigm. So that's just like very intuitive, easy to understand EVM compatible paradigm. And then we also have Cypher, which is WebAssembly based, confidential compute enabled paradigm. And we also have a third paradigm called Parcel, which is more focused on enterprise applications, where we'll kind of like abstract away the complexity of blockchain. So, for enterprise partners, writing Solidity might not necessarily, Solidity is not necessarily their go-to language to use. They probably prefer some other languages, and we kind of want to abstract away the complexity of blockchain for them. So yeah, so we're very much targeting developers. We don't necessarily build applications, dApps ourselves, but we are focusing on building the best infrastructure, the best consensus, and the compute layers to allow developers to build interesting high momentum applications on the platform. And that's what we meant by being very versatile, is EVM based, DeFi, NFT, crypto gaming is just one type of compute. And we also want to focus on many, many other computes in the future as the industry continues to evolve.
Yeah, wow, that's really cool. And, I have to think of node operators as kind of like the backbone of any blockchain. I don't know if that's correct in thinking that way, but how does that work with Oasis? Do you have like specific operators that kind of provide that node operations, or is it more open to the community? Anybody who has the hardware or the resources can create a node?
Yeah, so the entry barrier, so we have on the consensus layer, we have no operator. And on paradigm layer, we also have no operators. So let me talk about the no operator on the consensus layer first, which is the probably more commonly known. We use proof of stake. And yes, the entry barrier to become a no operator on the consensus layer is fairly low, at least from a hardware equipment perspective. You don't necessarily need like a very fancy, like really robust hardcore hardware to be able to run no operator on the Oasis network. It can just it's fairly easy to do that. And we actually have, we currently have 120 spots, and on the consensus layer, we'll have 120 no operator on the consensus layer. And yeah, all those spots have been filled. So yeah, so right now, if you want to make sure you can be part of the consensus layer no operator committee, you kind of have to make sure you have enough Rose tokens as escrow to be able to get into that validator set. So that's on the consensus layer. So basically, to summarize, hardware requirement is very low, but in terms of the stake, the escrow on the stake and / escrow level, because we have 120 spots, so you do have to make sure you have enough tokens as under escrow to be able to make it to the top 120, because we only have that many spots. We are considering expanding that validator set in the future as we continue to grow. So do definitely stay tuned for that for people who are interested in becoming a node operator on the consensus layer. And on the compute layer, each paradigm for Emerald and Cypher, we do have a set, a paradigm node set as well. So for Emerald, the hardware requirements also very low. It's running a compute node for EVM. For Cypher, because it's a computational compute enabled, so that has a higher bar. We do need node operator to have XGX, the secure enclave, to be able to run a node there. But that's also not necessarily. It should be easy to acquire that equipment if you are interested in becoming a node operator for that paradigm, right?
Yeah, very good. So you mentioned the other layer, the compute layer. What would be the advantage of having the two layers? Because I know there's other projects out there that are trying to go about it. There's a lot of ways to go about having the multi-layer, but specifically with Oasis, what made you guys decide on that model and some of the advantages compared to the other options that people are trying?
Right. So I think when we start this, I think this layer architecture is just kind of like it just become kind of like very. It's not necessarily a tough choice, definitely, because we look at Ethereum and on Ethereum or even on Bitcoin, like everything happens on one layer, and that kind of like makes the network very congested, and it just like absolutely a no-go for us. So, and I think when the founders of Oasis started this initiative, started this vision, she obviously wanted to be able to support a very wide range of compute demands, like what we call a responsibility economy, and being able to use those privacy-preserving technologies. So we know that just have everything on one layer, just like it's just mission impossible. And because we dream big, we want to make sure at some point in the future, Web3 can take over Web2. Maybe that's a very ambitious vision, or at least we're starting to enter in the world where like there's a hybrid model, Web3 and Web2, because right now Web3 is just a tiny fraction within the whole internet, right? So, and to be able to do that, you need to be able to process a lot of different types of compute. And so in that sense, having this parallel runtimes it just makes sense here, because you have confidential compute, you have non-confidential compute. It's not like every application needs this kind of privacy-preserving technologies. We want to be able to, and we want to build this infrastructure to be able to cater to all kinds of developers out there, people who care about privacy, people who probably deprioritize privacy. We want to make sure they can always, all of them can find a place at Oasis to build. So I think because of that, having this layer architecture, this parallel runtimes, just makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a good explanation. I think that it can be confusing for a lot of folks, myself included, but you did a very good job explaining that. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, if there's anything that I failed to bring up, I definitely want to give you the opportunity to give maybe some ending thoughts here. Anything you'd like to share, or where people can go to learn more, get involved. I just really want to give you the floor here for the last few minutes, if you'd like.
We recently launched the Oasis ecosystem fund. So let me take a step back. So yeah, Oasis, for sure, our core team is working hard to build the best infrastructure, best platform for developers, communities out there. And we want to make sure that when you come to Oasis, you are set up for success. So we want to provide the best developer experience for you. And we're setting up all these infrastructures beyond those technical infrastructure. We want to set up all these programs, and so we can better support our developers and founders and entrepreneurs out there who are building really interesting applications, whether that's DeFi, that's NFT, those gaming, or data DAO, data sovereignty related applications, basically to propel the industry forward towards the Web3 direction. So we set up we have the grants program. We have the over $200 million Oasis ecosystem fund. So that is not just Oasis Foundation. We also have a strong set of investors who are also backing, supporting that ecosystem fund. So you can get a wide, really kind of a big quorum support from really the known experts in the industry to help you to grow. So all these programs, and we also have the accelerator program with DevRadar and MetaMinds, which is another accelerator that we have. So all these, we set up all the programs beyond the technical platform we provide to our community. All these programs are really here to support you, to support the entrepreneurs out there, to help you grow and thrive on Oasis. So I guess some final thoughts is developer is extremely important to us, and we definitely are taking them very seriously, because we cannot just as much as we want to say that we're doing our best to move the industry forward, we cannot do this alone. We need you guys. We need all developers out there to join this mission with us to build a better data economy, better Web3, really kind of like propel Web3 forward. We just cannot do it by ourselves. We need a big group of people, a big community to kind of join the mission with us and work together with us to grow the industry. So let's build.
If there's any developers listening, the website is it oasis.org?
Oasisprotocol.org.
Oasisprotocol.org. Yeah, good stuff. It's exciting time. Thank you very much for coming on, Linda, explaining these concepts to us. I really enjoyed speaking with you. Thanks again. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Ethan. Truly honored to be invited here.